welcome to SwaminarayanSpirituality.com. This is the second talk on the introduction to Vachanamrut. I want to welcome you all to this series on the Vachanamrutam and all of the interconnected ideas that connect with this whole series. So I will speak initially some Sanskrit verses as prayers, and then we'll continue. This recording is in English. Every word that is in Gujarati, Hindi, Sanskrit, or any other language, it will be translated as accurately as I can translate it into English to convey the proper meaning. All right, so with that, I want to offer first some prayers, and then we'll continue from there. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakareshu Sarvada Om Ganganapate Namaha Om Bhagavate Shri Swaminarayanaya Namo Namaha Om Lakshminarayanaya Namo Namaha Om Narnarayanaya Namo Namaha Om Namah Shivaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Rudraya Om Om Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Om Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Mahalakshmi Rupena Samstita Namastasya 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 Namo Namaha Sarva Mangala Mangale Shive Sarvartha Sadhike Sharanye Trambake Gauri Narayani Namostute Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Gurur Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Gunatito Aksharam Brahma Bhagavan Purushottamaha Jano Janannidam Satyam Muchyate Bhava Bandhanat Om Bhagavate Shri Swaminarayanaya Namo Namaha Shri Sadgurubhyo Namo Namaha Dhyanamulam Gurur Murtihi Mantramulam Gurur Vakyam Pujamulam Gurur Padam Mokshamulam Gurur Krupa. Okay, now we can begin. First of all, I offer my prostrations, Dandvat Pranam, as it is known in the Gujarati language, to Bhagavan Shri Swaminarayan, who is also known as Sajanand Swami Maharaj, to all the Paramahansas, devotees of Maharaj at that time, to all the sages, enlightened beings, great souls from time immemorial throughout the world in all traditions, to all the devotees, sadhus, jnanis, bhaktas present today in the world and who are yet to come. I offer all of them my humble prostrations. Now with this, we are continuing our exploration on the introduction to the Vachanamrut. Before we actually go into the lines of the Vachanamrut, there is still more background information to cover so that the Vachanamrut can be understood in the proper context. It is necessary when we are studying any spiritual text, or what I would like to call as psycho-spiritual text, meaning psychological/spiritual, when we are attempting to study any text, we need to understand the context, the time and circumstances that it was written in, and the life, as well as the state of realization of the teacher, of the guru or the sadguru, the one who is teaching in that particular text. This is true with all texts in general, whenever there is a teaching that is going on, and then the learning process. So along those lines, some more points to keep in mind before we begin in the Vachanamrutam. First of all, Sajanand Swami Maharaj, this is a name. This name Sajanand Swami, that is a Diksha name given to that young sannyasi that is roaming in the forests and different places throughout India, comes to Gujarat. He was called Nilkant Varni at that time. And then he comes to Gujarat in the tiny little village of Loj. And from there, the whole saga begins as far as the Charitra of Sajanand Swami. There's quite a bit of Charitra. Charitra, I mentioned it last time. Charitra refers to the actions performed by enlightened beings. So Sajanand Swami, when he comes into Gujarat, actually, let's put it this way, when Nilkant Varani comes into Gujarat, he is a master yogi. He has mastered Ashtanga Yoga. Now, there's so much history in the life of this individual who is known as Bhagwan Swaminarayan today. But before we even get to the meaning of what those two words mean, Bhagwan Swaminarayan, we'll get to that later on in our exposition of Vachanamrutam. I just want to make sure that it's clear to the listeners that the life of this individual who came on this planet was 49 years in the human frame, and it is divided into 3 parts. The first part is up to age 11, that is called Ghansham Charitra, because his name was Ghansham. Then from age 11 through 18, that is called Nilkant Charitra. That is the roaming throughout the India into the religious places, the tirthas. There's quite a bit of history behind that. And then there is what is called Sahajananda Charitra. This is the third part, from the age 18 or to the point where he's given Diksha by Ramanand Swami up to the age 49. This is the 3 parts. So in a span of 49 years, the accomplishments, the extraordinary unfolding of spiritual truths is just beyond explanation. But I will do my best. Sachin is using the word I here because of language restriction. There's a lot of hesitation in my part to use I or me or mine. I don't like to use those words at all, but sometimes we have to use it. I just don't like the feeling behind it. That's why I try to avoid using that. But nonetheless, the fact of the matter is that Sajanand Swami, once he comes into Gujarat, is where this sampradaya begins to develop further. Now, there's so much to be said about this. So many people in today's world are familiar with this word Swaminarayan or Swaminarayan Sampradaya or Swaminarayan tradition. But there's a lot of confusion, misunderstanding, large amounts of misunderstanding. And most of the Gujarati community is also not clear about what this is about. So my attempt here, by the grace of God and the great sages, is to present this in English for the whole world, without divisiveness and without any kind of distortion. That is my prayer. I cannot guarantee there will not be distortion, but I will do my best, and I'll try to put things in as clear as way as that I can possibly put it. So some more background, that Sajanand Swami, from my point of view, from my years of study of Swaminarayan Sampradaya and life of Maharaj meaning Sajanand Swami, this is a fully integrated, complementary approach. It is not a contradictory approach. Sajanand Swami's approach to spiritual realization is an interconnected, synchronous approach. It is not a fragmentary or sectarian or any kind of divisive approach. Even though in today's sampradaya there are so many, quote, sects or different paramparas, but that's a different subject. I'll cover that also later at some point. But Sajanand Swami himself doesn't belong to any particular group of people. No enlightened being belongs to any limited group of people. He belongs to everybody. Belongs to all people at all times. Belongs to all living beings. This has to be understood. And this has to be understood as it is. Otherwise, it is very possible to get stuck into sectarianism, divisiveness, and then wind up getting into dislike for others, and then the ball starts rolling downward into hatred and violence and things like that have happened throughout the religious traditions of the world. So that we don't want to see that happen, and generally in the Indian traditions it doesn't happen really that much. Not that it doesn't happen, it does happen sometimes, but it doesn't happen that much. because the tradition is very tolerant. It tolerates a lot of differences, which is a great thing. But nonetheless, we're talking about Sahajanand Swami. This is an individual, as I mentioned last time, where you find the highest level of yogic sadhana. This itself is remarkable. The Ashtanga Yoga, the eightfold yogic process shown by Patanjali Maharishi in the Yoga Sutras. The Yoga Sutras are 200 sutras. This young boy at the age of from 12 or something like that, probably 12, 13, something at that age, 11 through age 12, I don't know the exact age, but he was in the Himalayas as Nilkhand Varani, completely intent on total brahmacharya, like sex sublimation, sex energy sublimation, and I've written a book on this also. So this young boy, right from childhood, he is completely intent on conserving the semen in the body and transmuting it into ojas. I want this point to be very clear. Now please bear with me as I explain these things, because this is very difficult to explain in any short period of time. That is why I'm going to take a lot of time to go through it carefully. This is not some walk in the park. It is a walk in the park, but it's a beautiful, it's going to take some time to unravel. So please be patient. That's my deeply humble request. So Sahajanand Swami, in the form of Nilkhand Varani, in that life of Nilkhand Varani, what we find is this tremendous, what is called mumukshutvam. As Adi Shankaracharya Ji has mentioned, Tivra mumukshutvam in the Vivek Chudamani, the desire for liberation. You find this in his life. Now, I just want to say one more thing. If devotees of Bhagwan Swaminarayan are listening to this, or people in the Sampradaya or sadhus or other devotees or whoever it might be, please understand that I'm going to try to present this as objectively from every possible angle. Because some people in the Sampradaya would not like the idea that I'm presenting Sahajanand Swami to begin with as a sadhak, as a mumukshu. But we have to start there. We cannot start with high-level concepts like Sarvopari Bhagwan. That's too far ahead for the general public. That I'm going to talk about that also when the time comes. But you cannot talk about extremely esoteric and very high-level metaphysics in the beginning, and you certainly cannot throw that idea in the general public. And then what's happened today? Ideas like Sarvopari Bhagwan, that the Supreme God is Bhagwan Swaminarayan, this idea is looked at in a very negative way by so many people. And that is one of the reasons why most of the people outside the Sampradaya never mentioned anything about Swaminarayan. They don't even mention his name, anything about his life. So I'm going to try to present this by the grace of God in a very sequential, objective way, so that these high-level metaphysical ideas about what is Akshara Brahma and what is Para Brahma and Aksharatit Paramatma, these words, we won't go into that right now. These things are at the highest levels of spirituality. But we cannot even begin to touch what that is until we begin at the very base. It's like someone who wants to climb Mount Everest. If someone is speaking from that top of the Mount Everest, that's a whole different view compared to someone who is on the ground. So we are at the ground level right now. And we will get to that top point as we move along. So anyway, I want to go slowly and carefully. Nilkhand Varani is a brahmachari. Brahmachari means he is intent on making sure in the male body that the sexual energy is transmuted into ojas. Ojas is a form of energy stored inside the brain, spiritual energy, brain and the mind. I would say more in the mind really. And that mind is infused with divine power for the purpose of constant bhakti. This concept, this idea, we find in great sages like Swami Ram Tirth. We find this in Swami Vivekananda, in Ramakrishna Paramahansa, and many other sages. And in the Swaminarayan tradition, we find this in so many great saints. But it started with Sajanand Swami, who is in this lineage of Brahmacharya. Now, please remember, if you are a grahastha, a householder devotee, the path is a different kind. It is not this complete sex sublimation, although you may go towards that at some point. It is a different path, which I will also talk about. Vachanamrut talks about this. Vachanamrut answers all these questions. That is the most extraordinary power in Vachanamrut. So anyway, we find Nilkant Varni that when he leaves the home at the tender age of 11, what he is holding in his body, what he's wearing on his body, are actually external representations of his whole mission, that is called Ekantik Dharma Pravartak. That one who is spreading the Ekantika Dharma. Ekantik means single-pointed devotion towards God. Dharma means here the combination of Dharma, Jnana, Vairagya and Bhakti. These four were always in his mind right from childhood. And I want to make sure that anyone listening to this, all those who are listening to this, are clear about this point. This is called Ekantik Dharma. Sometimes it is called Bhagavat Dharma. There are some different names for it. But it is a combination of these four spiritual ideals or developmental ideals in life. Dharma, Jnana, Vairagya and Bhakti. And what do they mean? Again, we will be going into that. But in simple language, it simply means Dharma means righteousness. What one ought to do, the ethics with which one lives. That is Dharma. Sad Acharan. That is called Dharma, as per Shikshapatri also. Shikshapatri, what that is, I'll talk about that later. Dharma, Jnana is spiritual vision, spiritual wisdom. I'm using simple language right now. We'll go into more details later. Vairagya is beyond attachment and detachment. Beyond the raga and dvesha. Attraction, repulsion are going on in life, a state beyond that. That is called Vairagya. And then the fourth thing is devotion. Devotion towards the one supreme God. It is a monotheistic approach, that there's devotion towards God. That is bhakti. Bhakti means devotion, love for God. Okay. So when Nilkant Varni leaves the home, you'll notice what he has with him. He's wearing a kaupin. Kaupin is like a certain garb that is there to cover the private organ. And he has a thread, the sacred thread of a Brahmin, and he is not wearing any other clothes really. So he's got that kaupin. Then he has is extract of the scriptures he has studied. It's called Gutko. It's a small extract of the main scriptures. So he's carrying that. Then he has a Shaligram. Shaligram is a form of Bhagwan Vishnu. It looks like a shivling, but it's not a shivling really. It's like it's a different kind of stone, and it is a form of Bhagwan Vishnu for doing puja. So that Shaligram is demonstrating bhakti. This Nilkant Varni is performing continuous bhakti of this Shaligram. Is carrying the Shaligram with him. Is carrying that essence of all the scriptures with him. That is the Jnana part. The Vairagya part is the not wearing any clothes except for the kaupin. And also the Brahmacharya is in that also. And then the Dharma is all the sadhana he's doing. The Ashtanga Yoga, the different fasts. Incredible number of fasts. Sometimes fasts are done for months at a time without eating anything. Just living on air only. Vayu Bhakshan it's called. And now there's actually quite a bit of modern science in some research studies that shows that this is possible. So he is doing intense sadhana right from beginning. What does it show? First of all, I want to make one thing clear. The fact that Nilkant Varni went to the Himalayas and started doing this type of sadhana and left the home and at this tender age and was so in the nature continuously, in the mountains, different mountains, ranges, and different forests, and with the animals, and that kind of an action is nearly impossible for all of us. It may not be completely impossible, but we would be filled with fear. We wouldn't know where the next meal is coming from. That was just the situation. There's not even the concern whether the body will live or die. It's that kind of state of realization right at the beginning. What does it mean? It is the height of what is called Param Vairagya. It is a height of realization where one is beyond the body. And I mentioned this in the first talk. Maharaj has said that he said that I've realized that I am a mukta, I am a liberated being, even before coming into the womb of the mother. So because of that, all of this sadhana is there to show what is possible with the human body when you do not waste any energy. And this is where the brahmacharya comes into play. When the internal energy system that is developing in the form of the sexuality in teenage, when that is transmuted completely in teenage into ojas, one reaches extraordinary states because there's no wastage. You will notice in Vachanamrut also this is mentioned at times, and then in other scriptures like Bhakta Chintamani, etc. This charitra of Nilkantha is described in detail, where he is performing various yoga asanas to make sure that the semen in the body is transmuted, it is conserved, that it is not lost. Now why? Why that much emphasis? That's because there is so much preciousness of this energy. It's the energy inside the mind that he is really talking about. That Shakti, it is called. It is called the Brahmacharya Shakti. So in the Nilkantha body, this power was so intense, so incredibly powerful. He was able to master Ashtanga Yoga in 1 year under the guidance of Gopal Yogi, one of the yogis in the Himalayas. And there were some other yogis also that he had visited. So this is some of the charitra. The point here, what do we take from this and how does this connect with Vachanamrut? Vachanamrut, before we can even begin to dip our toe into Vachanamrut, we need to understand the life, to some extent at least, of Sahajanand Swami and his state of mind, what he had gone through, what he was experiencing as a sadhak, as a bhakta, as a yogi. We need to understand that. And without that proper background, we will not really be able to touch the even the surface of the Vachanamrut. And we can read it, but we will not really be able to touch it. We need to see what it is. And again, this is all by the grace of the Gurus. Now, having said that, there are so many people who have read Vachanamrut and they can just go into it, and by the grace of God, they understand. That's not what I'm talking about. That's a different matter. In this endeavor, in this endeavor that Sachin is doing, is to attempt to explain this thoroughly. And for thorough explanation, it requires a thorough background also. Right? So, before we can even open the page of the Vachanamrut, see who is speaking that Vachanamrut, who is that individual, what is his life, what is his background, what has he gone through, what is he trying to accomplish in his life, and what is the goal of his life, what is he trying to convey through the teachings in this scripture that is Vachanamrut. That's a very important question. So we find Nilkantha in extensive charitra as Nilkantha, and there are so many different people he meets. There's so much activity in his life at that time. He is walking on foot. he has tremendous spiritual power. Because with Ashtanga Yoga, the yogi gets great siddhis and all kinds of spiritual dimensions open up. All of that is there. And there is an intense brightness in him. When he actually makes it to Loj in Gujarat, he meets some of the sadhus there. These are the saints of Ramanand Swami, who was a Vaishnava Bhakta and Acharya and Siddha in many ways. And he's having a satsang there, and he has a mandal there. He has a group of sadhus that are underneath him. And Muktanand Swami is the senior most sadhu. And all of these saints, they see this 18-year-old sannyasi, and they are just amazed at his spiritual glow. The intensity of this divinity emitting from that body, from that being, is incredible. It is written that all those saints said that whatever realization we have is nothing compared to this one individual. That his light, his brightness is so much. Right? So it is in that context that eventually Ramanand Swami gives him Diksha. There's a lot of charitra there. There are 3 letters that were written. Ramanand Swami was given 2 letters by Nilkantvarni and Muktanand Swami. And then Ramanand Swami wrote a letter back. These 3 letters are very profound. They describe all spiritual truths are in these 3 letters. This is called Tripatri, the 3 letters. And this is in the Bhakta Chintamani. Many saints memorize these 3 letters. And it is all rhymed. It's beautiful. It's in Gujarati. But the essence of it is that Ramanand Swami ultimately gives Diksha. And he names this young sannyasi who is 18 years of age, this young yogi, master yogi. He gives him 2 names. That is Sajanand Swami and Narayan Muni. So Narayan Muni and Sajanand Swami. Both names are given by Ramanand Swami as a Diksha. Now there is also an important prasang here. Before this Diksha was given, this Nilkantvarni and Muktanand Swami, they had pretty much decided that they wanted to go to the Himalayas and do akhand tapasya, akhand dhyan. Because, Nilkantvarni came from there. He wanted to have darshan of Ramanand Swami, and then he wanted to go back. But Ramanand Swami said, no, you are an incarnation of Bhagwan. You are a supreme being. You have to do your work here. But see, this is the thing, that when there is a highly evolved being or great soul or God himself comes, still there's a charitra. So Ramanand Swami gives Agnya, and then eventually he agrees that yes, I will stay in the Gujarat and stay in the satsang, stay among the householders, stay among the different sadhus and all. And then eventually he makes him the head of the organization at that time. That was called Uddhav Sampradaya. And that's the history behind it. Then eventually Muktanand Swami also realizes who is Sajanand Swami. He composes the Arti Jaya Sadguru Swami. That's the original Arti that is sung in many Swaminarayan temples today. And then from there the whole charitra continues. So it is at that point that all of this Vachanamrutam actually begins. I mean, it doesn't begin exactly at that point. It begins a little bit afterwards. But Vachanamrut is a discourse. It is called a Samvad Granth. Samvad meaning it is a question and answer where the people asking the questions are devotees. They're sadhakas. They are individuals who are wanting to gain further wisdom, further realization. Sometimes questions are asked by highly evolved saints. They already know the answers, but they are asking for some younger saints like that. Sometimes the questions asked are deliberately not responded by the evolved saints because they want to hear the answer from the lips of Maharaj. So all of that is there. So Vachanamrut is in context. It is in this context. Now, in the life of Maharaj, he maintained and always kept the best connection, study, and contemplation on the original scriptures in the Sanatana Dharma. So these include the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, these two big scriptures, and then of course the Vedas and other commentaries of the Acharyas. These things were all available at that time also. So there were books and books, there were Puranis. Maharaj used to keep different Puranis. These are individuals who are learned in these scriptures, and that katha is going on and Maharaj is listening. He's listening, then bhajans are going on. And so there's katha and kirtan. These two things are going on. Katha meaning this exposition on the original scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam, Vasudeva Mahatmya, Bhagavad Gita, Vidur Niti, there may be some different Ved Stutis. It's from different Upanishads. All of this is going on and Maharaj is listening to all this. And he's also studied a lot of these things, obviously. But he is listening to it, and then he will halt. He will say, okay, now let's ask some questions. Let me ask a question, Maharaj will say, or somebody will ask him a question. So Vachanamrut is this question-answer dialogue that is occurring in between this continuous flow of bhajan, kirtan, katha, and constant exposition of the scriptures of the Sanatana Dharma. This needs to be understood clearly. Vachanamrut is not where there was just a particular time when Maharaj just came and just spoke like that. And there are some times when that has happened, but it's not really like that as much. It's most of the time there is bhajan, kirtan, katha, varta, other things are going on, other contemplation is going on, and then Maharaj is speaking based on what the scriptures are saying, and many times he's also making statements that are not in those scriptures. So that's the amazing, interesting thing about Vachanamrut, that it is spoken by Sajanand Swami from his realization, not simply as a repetition of what's in the scriptures. He has given references to the scriptures. He has summarized many things in the Vachanamrut, because Vachanamrut it has the extract of all the scriptures. It is a quintessence, as I mentioned last time. But that quintessence is there because Maharaj himself was living in that quintessential reality of high level of integration, complete level of integration, interconnection, and extracting from there that which is needed for ultimate realization, atyantika kalyana, the final realization. So that is why Vachanamrut has the power it has, because it is spoken from a being who is keeping the context of the Sanatana Dharma scriptures, and in that context is speaking from his own realization without destroying that context. See this point. See, somebody can speak just from what they're speaking. They wouldn't need the Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam or the Mahabharata or the Ramayana or anything, or the Vedas or the Upanishads. No, I'm just speaking. You got people write it down, and then there are followers who can even accept that. But that's not what was done by Sajanand Swami. He always maintained the best connection with the Sanatana Dharma. And he has himself stated that in Vachanamrut, that the words of Ved Vyasji are praman, meaning what? That it's his full acceptance of the words of Ved Vyasa. Ved Vyasa is the original Acharya who systematized the Vedas, the Upanishads, the 18 Puranas, etc., the Mahabharata and whatnot. All those scriptures were written by one individual who's also considered to be an incarnation of God. So Maharaj is speaking from his realization and is making and is also synthesizing, extracting, literally pulling into a highly concentrated state hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ideas in few sentences. So if you were to take any sentence of the Vachanamrut, even one paragraph or one or two sentences, you could find 200 scriptures in that. You could find 300 scriptures. You could find just an endless amount of wisdom that is in so many other scriptures. It's concentrated and written this way by the editors of the by the editors of the Vachanamrut. They haven't changed the language. They just selected the essence that Maharaj spoke. Maharaj may have spoken for 1 hour, 2 hours, but then they have extracted the essence of that without changing the words. They compared all their notes and then they created the Vachanamrutam. That is the power of Vachanamrut, because within it it's every sentence carries the weight of thousands of scriptures. I would say even that is too less to say. If we open each sentence carefully, which we will do when we actually begin the Vachanamrut, you will see how it carries that weight. Because there is a miracle in the Vachanamrut. One of the biggest miracles is that a villager can understand the language and gain final liberation, and the most awakened being, high siddha or Paramahansa level, highly learned, extreme near God realization, people who have studied thousands of scriptures will still find something completely new in this. They will find ideas that they have not even thought about. That is one of the biggest miracles of Vachanamrut. That in simple Gujarati language, the extraordinary extracting ability, synthesizing, pulling together contradictory ideas from all different acharyas and pulling them together and synthesizing them and showing exactly where they connect, how they connect. All of that is in Vachanamrut. The whole Bhagavad Gita is summarized in the Vachanamrut. The essence of the Gita. You can take any shlok, you'll find a connector in the Vachanamrut. You can take any shlok from the Bhagavatam, you'll find a connector. In fact, to date, in my own study, because I've been studying it for at least 20 to 25 years, maybe more, I can pick up literally any book in psychology, even medical sciences, in any scripture of the world. Doesn't matter, you'll find a connection in Vachanamrut. Even things like genetics are described there. Where the field of genetics ends, Vachanamrut begins. Where the field of psychology has come to an end point, Vachanamrut begins. The essence of the Gita, the whole Bhagavad Gita, 700 verses, which has so many different yogas, Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga and Dhyan Yoga and Jap Yoga and Mantra Yoga and this yoga and that, Akshar Yoga and Parabrahma Yoga and Purushottam Yoga. All of this thing is synthesized in beautiful ways in Vachanamrut. And very applicable, very practical. Even the question of Maya, very beautifully discussed, very straightforward discussed. But it's for those who are wanting to realize God. Now, that brings me to my next point. The next point is that Vachanamrutam is actually for all human beings. Nonetheless, it is specifically for those who are wanting to evolve spiritually, to realize the Atma, to realize God, to reach a higher level of realization. It is for sadhaks. It is for those who are wanting to take this path towards a higher realization. It is also for individuals who are already on the path towards higher realization. And it is also for individuals who are very close to realization of the ultimate truth. It is for everybody. Even if someone who has never traveled this path, they can begin and it will all open up. It requires patience. It requires some time. So this is the background. This is some of the background. There's so much that we can say. There's no end to all that, all the background. Otherwise, we will never actually begin the Vachanamrut if we just stay in the background. Because the life of Sahajananda Swami is so unbelievable and so extraordinary that that it is not possible to explain that in just a series of recordings. But some points I'm just mentioning here, just to get a little glimpse, because the key point here simply is that Maharaj is using a synthesis. That synthesis was in him, and that's a guidance for us to synthesize rather than to fragment, to pull together rather than to create divisiveness. you find this in his life throughout. If you look at the scripture that is called Shikshapatra, 212 verses, it's a tremendous synthesis. This is the Agnya Granth. This is the Agnya to the devotees who were followers of Sajanand Swami at that time and afterwards, to follow these 212 precepts. Is a tremendous synthesis of the whole Sanatana Dharma. And then there's also the Bhashya written. There's a commentary on the Shikshapatri written by Shatanand Swami, I believe. And so he has written that massive commentary on the Shikshapatri. And then there's so many sages who've given thousands of hours worth of talks on those commentaries also. So then that goes on like that. But the Shikshapatri is 212 verses. And that has the essence of all the scriptures within it. And then in the Shikshapatri, in the end, it also says, go into the other scriptures of the Sampradaya for further elaboration. So that's an opening into who is Sajanand Swami and into the entire Sampradayic teaching, the actual teachings of Sajanand Swami and his life and the scriptures created. So I'll talk about that a little bit later on as we move into the Vachanamrut also. Right? So this is the background. This is some of the background. What we will do is start the Vachanamrut next time, and we will start at the very beginning. We will go line by line by line very carefully, and by the grace of God and all the sages, maybe we can gain some wisdom out of this. And primarily these recordings are for my own benefit more than anything else, but it is a way of trying to share with the world the extraordinary teachings of a being that many people don't know about. There's a lot of misunderstanding about it. To clarify it all, and hopefully that these talks can be beneficial to anybody listening to them. All right, so thank you very much.